Drawing from Imagination, Lesson 9, Imagining Volume with Light and Shade. Before starting this lesson, please have the following materials ready: sketch pad, ebony pencil, pencil sharpener, kneaded eraser, subject matter, light and shade on imagined three-dimensional forms. Keep track of assignments. Do each exercise in order in your sketchpad. Change pages for each exercise and use as many pages as you need, but on each page, write your name and the number of the exercise. For example, I-9A. Also, after doing the assignments, remember to take photos of all your drawings. The previous lesson introduced value in drawing through the use of hatching on planes and cross-contour lines on curved surfaces. This lesson extends your value skills and reviews the principles of light and shade, then applies these to an invented robot. There are many reasons to use light and shade in drawing. Here, we will focus on the most common use, drawing tones on objects to suggest volume and mass. In fact, we'll explore two different ways of doing this: modeling and rendering. To warm up, let's practice developing tonal effects and learn about the scale of values from light to dark, what artists and designers call a gray scale. Exercise I-9A, Warm Up, Continuous Tone. Time, 8 minutes. Materials, ebony pencil on sketch pad, pencil sharpener, and kneaded eraser. Subject, continuous tone shading. The first exercise starts you out making a light, even tone, then making it darker and darker. This may seem easy, but as you'll see, just drawing one tone smoothly takes care and attention, and still more skill and patience is required to darken it gradually. Begin by sharpening the ebony pencil to a fine point. Then hold the pencil at an angle so the whole surface of the tip is touching the paper. To create a tonal area, start with a circular motion, rotating the tip around a central point, making a wider and wider loop so the tonal area ends up about 3 inches in diameter. Try to keep the pressure light and even so the tone is a consistent light gray. Then gradually darken the circle towards the center using the same circular motion, but steadily increasing pressure and passing the pencil again and again over the same surface. Keep at it until the very center is black, while being careful to keep the outer edges light and maintaining a steady transition from light to dark with no abrupt shifts in contrast. If you see any shifts like this, even them out either by darkening them gradually with the pencil or lightening them carefully with the kneaded eraser. Rather than rubbing with this kind of eraser, however, you can flatten it out and pat it gently on the area you want to lighten, and the eraser will pull up some of the graphite. You can also use the eraser like this at the edge of the circle to soften the transition between the white of the page and the tonal area. If you do this right, it will be hard to see where the paper ends and the tonal area begins. Notice the effect these techniques start to make and practice them. Also, when the kneaded eraser gets dirty, you can knead it with your fingers to make a clean surface. Only a kneaded eraser works this way. Okay, start. and stop. Next, we'll apply these tonal skills to create volumetric effects on geometric forms. We didn't mention it in the warm up, but while you were making the circle go from light to dark, you might have noticed that you were also creating effects of form and space. The light areas at the edges of your circle may have appeared to come to the surface of the paper. By contrast, you may have had the impression that you are pushing the gradually darkening tones deeper and deeper into the space of the page, like going into a tunnel or a cave. You might have even imagined the darkness pulling you in like a black hole. In both cases, drawing like this engages an imaginative feeling of sculpting forms or creating spaces. The following technique uses such effects intentionally to create a sense of volume or mass using a technique called modeling. The name comes from the process of making objects in clay. For this exercise and the following ones, you'll need a range of tones from white to black to create the fullest sense of volume or mass possible. To be sure you have a wide enough range of values with clear distinctions between each one, it will help to refer to a gray scale like this standard 7-step scale. Exercise I-9B, Modeling Forms. Time, 12 minutes. Materials, ebony pencil on sketchpad, pencil sharpener, eraser. Subject, continuous tone shading in a gray scale. Here, you'll draw a set of simple geometric solids with curving surfaces, a sphere, a cylinder, and a cone. Start by drawing out the shapes just using line, a circle for the sphere, etc. Then we'll add tone, first to the circle, but in the opposite way from what you did in the warm-up. There you made the circle the darkest in the middle and lightest on the far outside. Here, leave the center white and gradually build a light gray to dark gray tones towards the outside, turning black only at the outer edge where the tone merges with the outline. When you're done, this flat shape should look not like a black hole, but a white sphere. Do the same with the cylinder and cone. Okay, start. and stop. We called the last technique modeling because you were supposed to imagine that as you increased pressure on the pencil to darken the form, you were actually pressing deeper and deeper into a piece of clay, molding or modeling it in 3 dimensions. Another reason why these forms might look 3 dimensional is that you could imagine light striking the front of the form, with the rest of the form getting darker and darker as it turns away in space. The next exercise involves similar effects of light. Exercise I-9C, Light on Invented Forms. Time, 2 steps at 10 minutes and 5 minutes, so 15 minutes. Materials, ebony pencil on sketchpad, pencil sharpener, kneaded eraser. Subject, constructed cubes and egg with imagined light source. This next exercise is called rendering, and it's based on the way light and shadow areas appear on actual objects, revealing the object's 3 dimensional structure and its relation to other objects around it. To start, we'll make 2 line drawings of imagined objects, one an isometric cube, the other an egg-like form, an oval wider on one end than the other. Then we'll imagine a single light source positioned above, slightly in front of the objects, and to their right side. This position is often used when drawing objects from observation or imagination because it creates the clearest sense of volume, especially for challenging subjects like the human face and figure. To do this effectively, follow the steps illustrated in this video. In the process, try to remember the terms for lights and shades we mentioned so you can apply them later to forms and subjects you create yourself. Number 1. On the lower half of the page, draw freehand the cube and the egg shape next to one another as if they were sitting on a surface. Draw a circle above them and to the right to symbolize a light bulb with rays pointing at the objects. Number 2. Determine which part of the cube and egg are going to be most brightly illuminated. These are the surfaces facing most directly towards the light source. Draw a light circle around that spot on the egg, not too small. The light area on the cube will be the top plane. Number 3. Draw a shape similar to the shape of each object just below them and angling off to the left. These are meant to represent the shadows cast by the objects on the surface they're imagined to be on. Number 4. Now apply an even medium light gray, the shade of the third square in the 7-step grayscale, over the rest of both objects, everywhere except the designated light area. Also, fill in the shapes of the cast shadows with this value too. Number 5. Add a darker tone, the middle tone in the grayscale, to the surface of each object that is furthest from the light and color in the cast shadows with this deeper tone too. These steps will also be illustrated on the timing screen if you need to refer to them again. Okay, start. and stop. Already, you should be getting some sense of three-dimensionality in your objects, but so far you've only done the basic tonalities and drawn them in flat, even areas, making the egg look flat too. The next phase adds softer tones and value transitions and must be done delicately, like you did when we built up values gradually in your warm-up. Here we'll also add two more value areas. Number 6, delicately add a slightly darker tone to the egg shape just below the light area, grading off gradually as it goes down the egg, so the egg is still a light gray on the bottom. Darken the cube on the darkest plane starting in the upper right-hand corner and grading towards the lower left, so the bottom is still the original gray color. This darker part of the dark area is the core of the shadow. Number 7, delicately add another darker tone to the cast shadow just below the egg and the cube, the core of the cast shadow. Let it grade out as it goes away from the object. In between the core of the shadow and the cast shadow is a lighter area, representing the reflection of light on the egg from the surface it's sitting on, called the reflected light. Number 8, last but not least, delicately add a very light gray, like the second square in your grayscale, all across the light area of your egg and the light plane of your cube, but leave it pure white nearest to the core of the shadow. This will be the highlight. It represents the spot directly struck by the light source. On a shiny object, the highlight reflects the actual shape of the light. Okay, start. and stop. If you need to take a short pause, go ahead and do that now. For the last exercise, you get to apply these lighting skills to an imaginary robot. Just as you used simple geometric shapes to draw an invented house and an imaginary birdhouse, here you'll use cubes, spheres, egg shapes, cylinders, pyramids, and cones in combination to make a human like mechanical figure. Exercise I-9D Imaginary Robot. Time 2 stages at 5 and 25 minutes, so 30 minutes. Material sketchpad, ebony pencil, pencil sharpener, kneaded eraser. Subject imaginary humanoids. Start by sketching some simple stick figures in action, and then choose one and draw a larger version. Use the stick figure like a skeleton and add shapes for the head or heads, torso, and limbs. Construct the head, body, and limbs out of the three-dimensional forms you learned how to draw in the previous lessons. As with the house and birdhouse, begin with the basic body parts and then add details. Make your robot any shape and proportion you like. The forms can be rectilinear, curvilinear, or a combination. You might even combine parts of a robot with parts of a human being to make a cyborg. Again, let your imagination run wild. Okay, start. and stop. After you get the pose and parts worked out, decide where you want the light source. Here, it doesn't have to be above. Once the light is set, leave the sides facing the light source white, or relatively light if you want everything to be dark, and then add the values gradually, following the sequence as you did before. Generally, it's easier to put in major light, dark, and middle tone areas after you build the major forms. Then, as you add details like facial features, apply similar values but on a smaller scale. Okay, start. And stop. Before you quit for the day, check that each page of drawings is labeled with your name and the number of the exercise, and be sure you've taken photos of each page of drawings you did for each assignment. Great job! The next and final lesson in this series will be applying light and shade to drawing an invented face and head. After that, you should be ready to draw just about anything.